Yeah, he said that
great black intellectual Muslim. That's right, brother.
I just want to ask a quick question. What's your views on these London nationalists?
Okay, so the Tommy Robinson to followers and so on. Basically, from what I can see, it would appear that they have something. Meaning that, well, they've identified that it's this religion that's causing all the problems. And this ideology is going to take over Europe, and it's trying to take over, and it's going to apparently try and bring everyone backwards. The problem is with that kind of idea, teaching that on a mass scale without really going into it in detail and saying what elements of a religion or ideology, is it's just going to produce hatred, an irrational hatred. And that's the problem that I see, although they may have some points, that interpretations of the Quran by certain groups are absolutely anti-civilization. I agree with that. However, to use blanket statements that Islam is backward, Islam is not in agreement with civilization or Western civilization or Western culture. How does that work when you say that when Muslims have been here for so long, number one? Number two, even the white British, if everyone of color left, they would all be multicultural in themselves. They already have a multiculture. So if you want to claim that Islam is this big problem, then I would suggest that you have your intellectuals discuss it. Not just have certain people that are angry, frustrated, and need to blame somebody and direct your focus onto a religion and to a group of people, the Muslims, so to speak. Because what you're doing is, you're going to produce a whole heap of people in the country that are having a hatred towards an ideology and the people. And then it's going to have a backlash with those defending themselves who do not agree with the interpretations that the Western people are hating. And then they're going to react and respond in self-defense. Who's that? Sorry. So the Muslims are going to react in self-defense. Then those that are racist are going to have to react again, as we've seen. And then it's just going to escalate and escalate until what happens? Civil war. That's the only thing I can see this type of thing bringing. Saying every minute we need to export people, or what's the word?
Extradite.
What's the, not, you've got immigrants and I can't remember the other word. The other, send them back. No, the ones that you need to send them out.
Deport them.
Deport, that's the word I'm looking for. They keep talking about deporting people. But what about the British-born white Muslims? Where are you going to deport them?
Lock him up.
And not just that, I personally think if you were to deport all the Muslims from the UK...
I thought you were Muslim, you're not Muslim.
Can I speak without interruption, please? Thank you very much. As I was saying, I personally think if you removed Muslims from here, you would still have Islam on the internet. And you would have your rebellious youth, white youth, looking into Islam and actually converting. So I think it would actually go against you if you tried that. My suggestion for anyone that's on this kind of anti-Islamic perspective, my suggestion is you find another way of dealing with it. Obviously, with me being so-called Shia, true Muslim, I suggest you understand that the problem does come from the Sunni side of things, and within the Sunni side, there is an element which is absolutely corrupting the whole thing. And they seem to have the biggest voice. The media seem to give them the biggest coverage. And therefore, somehow, this minority and its viewpoint has become the face of Islam. And therefore, this minority has become the face of Islam. And then you're basically making people, excuse me please, you're making masses of people buy into a myth. So to me, it's similar to the Sunnis buying into the myths against the true Muslims, the Shia. It's similar to the myths of black people being inferior and hating black people because of the stereotypes that they presented. So what's the result? Civil war. And then I keep hearing a lot of these, what's the word, ethno-nationalist guys saying they don't want war. Well, what the hell? Civil war is still war, but let's call it civil war. But excuse me, Muslims, please. So as I was saying, if you all need to I suggest you all need to start thinking of another way of doing this thing. Marching up and down the street against Islam and freedom of speech to criticize Islam and getting people to be against Islam, I can't see how that's going to work, even if it's against Sunnism in the way that you're doing it. You need to get your intellectuals to start discussing and debating with intellectual, knowledgeable Muslims. Not marching up and down the street, shouting slogans of hatred, encouraging hatred. Because hatred will definitely breed hatred. So for me, I've been East of the Great Black Intellectual Muslim, and there you go. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, I can't talk to a camera, man.
I think that's a fairly kind of good points made.
What would you disagree with, sir?
The closest one thing I slightly disagree with is I know you referred to this element within the Sunni side that's responsible for most of, I know what you might have said, problems or something, and I think you were maybe referring to perhaps traditionalists or Salafis or Deobandis, kind of those sorts of like hardline kind of conservative interpreters. And the thing is, even though probably they're a minority in total numbers in the UK, if you actually look at the mosques and like who's preaching at the mosques, I looked at I saw a study done by the Times in 2007 that found that if you looked at both Deobandi and Salafi mosques combined, they made a majority of the Sunni mosques in the UK. So if, like, even though like kind of most Muslims probably don't dedicate that much of their time towards kind of going to the mosque or that sort of thing. They just want to like live their lives, and it's just their family and what they've been brought up with. It looks as though kind of amongst the kind of Muslims who do take it quite seriously and like practice quite regularly and like kind of join in the kind of religious life and go to the mosque and stuff, that kind of hardline interpretation might not be kind of a small minority. It might be kind of like...
When you say hard, can you be specific on what it is that you're saying is hardline? For instance, are they hardline meaning they must pray, they must fast, they must do Hajj? What is the hardline part you're talking about?
Yeah, the hardline part, I guess, would be like seriously believing that the laws from the 7th century, like
Round one, fight!
That the laws from the 7th century Rashidun Caliphate would be the best laws for
you coming in? Okay. Okay.
So like I think that because a lot of Muslims kind of have very little awareness of what Sharia law is, and then there's another group who kind of think, oh yeah, Sharia law is actually the best thing in the world. It really should be our legal system.
Okay. When you say this, like you said, they don't know what the legal system of Sharia law should look like.
Yeah.
Should look like. They don't even know what it really looks like when it's implemented. So it is kind of a fantasy in a lot of their head. It seems like a theory of logical arguments that make sense in their head for prevention of problems. And then there's those that actually do know. They've either lived in countries where they practice and implement it. With me, as you know, I generally cut to the chase. I generally say the problem is the Sunni religion, right? You know me, I say Sunnism is a separate religion. You keep mentioning the Rashidun Khalifa. I say the same thing. So, at the end of the day, you're basically saying that Sunnism is the problem.
Okay, well, but like, what if some of those problems still carried on while Ali was the Caliph?
No, because when you say while Ali was the Caliph, he's had to now juggle with so much different problems.
Okay.
And not just that, when you read his history, are you reading the Sunni version of history, or are you reading the Islamic? When I say Islamic, the so-called Shia. You see what I'm saying? Because I've heard several things that Sunnis say, and it's wrong. It's, they lie on Ali quite a lot.
Okay.
So
I'm not aware whether like the sources I've read would have a kind of sectarian slant or not.
Always. You have to remember something. They always have to give a sectarian slant because Ali is such a key figure, because he opposed Abu Bakr and Umar. That's a key figure. Do you understand? Yeah. So therefore they have to sort of patch and make sure they mould Ali to be loving of Abu Bakr, loving of Umar, and all these lies they create. So, they have to make stuff up regarding Imam Ali.
But I mean, if like historical records show that, under the reigns of Abu Bakr and Umar, kind of offensive jihad, unprovoked offensive jihad was launched, and like invasions of countries like the Christian kingdom of Makuria in Nubia, and if they launched those kind of invasions, like, what reason do we have to believe that kind of Ali wouldn't have also been in favour of like similar invasions that might have occurred during his reign?
Did you know that he stayed out of the wars of Abu Bakr when he started killing the Sahaba?
It was.
So the Sunnis say they left Islam, the ones that refused to give Abu Bakr zakat.
Yeah.
Yes? Now, obviously, according to Bukhari, the Sahaba did not generally believe that Abu Bakr was an Islamic legitimate caliph. Yes?
Yeah.
So that's even in the Sunni books, right? So then why should they give him zakat? If the Sahaba, a lot of them, did not believe him to be Islamically legitimate, you shouldn't be giving him zakat in the first place. You see what I'm saying? So that would mean Abu Bakr killed Sahaba. So I'm saying they got into power, and by the time you got to Ali, there was all these problems. They've already conquered, they've caused so much problems. You know, I would suggest you try and read the other side of the story.
You're right. I'm not really a kind of person to talk about kind of the origins of
what my point is generally approaching the Quran, because Imam Ali and the whole of the 12 Imams taught that when they say anything, ask them where it is in the Quran. So therefore, for me, it's very easy to deal with any opposition in general. In general, meaning if it's a topic that I'm promoting or using to show that Sunniism is not Islam at all, then it's something I can go into depth. If it's something, let's say you bring, what's that thing you always use? Inheritance.
Yeah.
I've never been in a situation where I've had to debate and discuss this.
Yeah.
So it's not something I feel I need to go into. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so it hasn't taken my time to study.
Okay.
I'm saying that if I debate that topic with you, let's say I put in hours and I come back, you probably say, oh, okay, that's a point, and you move to another one. And there's no real consequence. However, I'm just saying, if I prove, for instance, that Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman are not Islamically legitimate caliphs, that's the whole of the Sunni religion gone.
Yeah.
If I prove that the Quran is saying Aisha is an enemy of the Prophet and Allah and the righteous believers and Gabriel and the angels, then again, that's Sunniism gone. Do you see what I'm saying? So these are big things that I like to debate. And I'm saying what I've seen as an Afro-Caribbean is a lot of my Afro-Caribbean black brothers go from one slave master, to white Christian, to another under Sunniism. They have no, there's no legitimacy in Sunniism for them to use their own intellect in studying the Quran. So then they're slaves again. And that's why you find them going and, what the hell does an Afro-Caribbean grow up in England, convert to this religion, and start fighting and killing and raping in other countries?
Okay.
Do you understand? That's the Sunni ideology.
Okay. I think there's still some things in the Quran that would make you feel uncomfortable. Like, in Surah 23 verses 1 to 7, it says something like those people have succeeded, they who kind of pray quietly and they who do this, and then it goes on to say, and they who hide their private parts except from their wives or those whom their right hand possess. So obviously that says like kind of right hand possessed refers to slaves, but it also says that you're allowed to kind of like show your private parts, like show your penis to the slaves you own. Like imagine if you like enslave someone, and then now you're free to just like show them your penis whenever you want.
It's not it's not a showing. What it's saying is God meaning.
It's like your wife, you can show her your
meaning that you do not have sexual intercourse with anyone who's not legitimate. Now, I would say to you that these captives, the circumstance, you have to get into the psychology of the people. So you don't just study the Muslims, you study the opponents as well, and the time period. We don't need to go all the way back then, we can just study 100 years ago in Britain or any other place and see what was acceptable to both sides. What was the norm? And I'm saying to you that Islam is always trying to make sure that you evolve further and better.
Okay, so that's a good distinction, I guess, between like kind of when you first asked me like what makes them hardline or what makes them traditional. Like a lot of them would kind of reject this kind of always try and like evolve your understanding of the times, and they think no, like this.
It's not understanding; it's about justice. So, for instance, you didn't have massive prisons back then.
Yeah. You
couldn't provide massive courses for your prisoners and say, right, you do this course, and they're like, wow, you know what? I shouldn't see this way, and so on and so forth. Do you see my point? So if you're in the desert, bruv, you have to deal with desert life. So, you have a choice. Let's say you're talking about female captives. What are the options for that person that's a captive that's a female?
Join another.
Tell me what, other than...
If they weren't a captive, they could join another kind of settlement.
could they pick up a bow and arrow and start killing the Muslims?
No, they wouldn't be able to fight back, really.
What? No, I'm saying if you came to a place, I'm saying if the order of the day was to ransack a place and take the women and so on, and to rape them and treat them, you know, inferior because they're the enemies, then Islam comes and says, no, you can't treat them inferior. These are the rights because they're human beings, etc. And I'm suggesting to you, when it says what your right hands possess, is talking about marriage. Now, people are going to tell me, what woman, after you've, let's say, captured her and so on, is going to be okay with this? I'm saying go and study history and study the psychology of people. If you, in fact, study the psychology of people now in certain tribal areas, okay? And certain, let's say, parts of Europe now, what they accept to be normal and good compared to what we in modern Britain think is normal and good. Just now. So I'm saying to you, those types of women, would they be grateful compared to what their own people... I'm saying, like, I don't know how to phrase it without making it look bad, but I'm saying, because as modern people, we can never in our right mind say, hold on, you capture this woman, and all of a sudden she's going to be happy with you trying to marry her. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, that might sound ludicrous to us, but let's deal with history and psychology. And if they said, you know what, they would prefer that because he's got a house her, clothe her, feed her. He's not raping her, he's not killing her, etc. So he's saying, listen, this is the option. I would like you to be my maidservant because you were an enemy. Do you get what I'm saying? You were going to kill me and so on. And imagine that they capture somebody that might still want to kill you. Think about that.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Because, you know, it's possible, isn't it?
Yeah. Sure.
So what would you suggest that they do? Because you have an issue with your right hand possessed.
Yeah.
Yes? What do you advise them to do with this female?
So like...
In the desert of Arabia.
Yeah, so for example, I mean, you might reject this because it's like from Bukhari, but like there's a hadith of how in the aftermath of one battle, Khalid ibn Walid saw a group of women and children running away from in the aftermath of the battle, like after their side had been defeated, and they were about to reach a mountain, and Walid thought, I was worried that they'd get to the mountain because then it would be hard for me to kind of pursue them. So he fired an arrow, and the arrow went like further than them and like landed in front of them. And then they stopped because like kind of they saw that like, you know, this is a threat, I could shoot you if I wanted to. So then they allowed themselves to be taken captive. And so, you know, I think that indicates that even though there may be some who kind of like are resigned to their fate, like others would have thought our chances are better, and we would prefer not to be enslaved and captured by these people who are just, you know, destroyed our tribe, and you know, we prefer to like try and make it to another Jewish settlement or something like that. And you know, if it's a group of women and children, I mean, I think one thing you need to remember as well is that the Quran refers to, it says in like verse 8, Surah 8, verse 66 maybe, something like and enjoy the spoils of war, enjoy the war booty, lawful and good. And this war booty would refer to, in addition to like, I know, riches and money, it would also refer to the women and children taken captive and the other people taken captive. So that's like a difference to like, you know, look after these prisoners of war like you might have in the Geneva Convention. If you're saying like enjoy them, lawful and good, like, oh, these are your property now, that's like a less noble intention than kind of you know, how the Geneva Convention says, oh, like these prisoners of war are your,
I would suggest you don't look at it